Welcome, welcome, welcome to the deep dive. So glad you're here with us today.
Great to be diving in.
So, if you've ever felt, stuck trying to make a change, or maybe you know what you should be doing, but just can't seem to make it stick.
Yeah, that feeling's pretty common, I think.
Well, this deep dive is definitely for you. Today, we're plunging into a topic that, well, it might seem small at first glance.
Tiny, even.
Right. But as we're about to discover, it holds this immense, life reshaping power. We're actually starting with a story that really sets the stage.
It really does. It's a story about a moment that honestly could have ended everything for the author we're looking at, James Clear.
Yeah.
But instead, it became this catalyst for incredible transformation.
Wow. Okay, paint the picture for us.
Okay, imagine this. He's just finishing his sophomore year of high school. Normal day, right? He's on a baseball field. A classmate takes a full swing with a bat,
Okay.
but the bat slips. Flies right out of his hand straight towards James. The impact. So forceful he remembers nothing. Blackout. His nose is crushed into this, distorted U-shape. His brain actually slams into the inside of his skull. Swelling immediately surges.
Jeez.
In just a fraction of a second, he's got a broken nose, multiple skull fractures, and get this, 2 shattered eye sockets.
Shattered. Both of them.
Both. He apparently opened his eyes for a moment, saw people staring, running to help, and then just passed out.
That's terrifying. And what's this parallel you mentioned?
Yeah, this is where it gets kind of eerie.
Yeah.
Just 10 years earlier, his parents had been in the exact same hospital building,
The same one.
the very same one,
Yeah.
on the ground floor. That time, it was when his 3-year-old sister was diagnosed with leukemia. He was only 5 then. His brother, just a baby.
Wow. Talk about a difficult time for the family.
Absolutely. 2.5 years of chemo, spinal taps, bone marrow biopsies. I mean, a grueling ordeal. But she walked out happy and cancer-free.
That's incredible. A miracle, really.
It is. And now, a decade later, his parents find themselves back in that very same place with a different child, him, as he slipped into a coma.
That parallel must have been overwhelming for them.
You can only imagine. But this profound personal setback, this moment of just extreme vulnerability, it became the unexpected foundation for his whole understanding of how small changes, these seemingly insignificant things,
Yeah.
when they compound, can lead to really remarkable, sometimes life-saving results.
Yeah.
It planted the seed for everything he talks about in Atomic Habits.
Absolutely. And that's our mission today, right? To take your sources, focusing really hard on the key insights from Atomic Habits and unpack how these atomic units,
The building blocks.
exactly, the fundamental pieces of a larger system, how they can, over time, create just profound differences in our lives. We want to uncover the basic principles of habit formation, behavior change.
And give you a practical roadmap, something you can actually use.
Right, a roadmap for personal growth. The goal is really to show you how even the smallest shifts can put you on a completely new trajectory heading towards your best self.
Precisely. It's about understanding these almost invisible forces that shape our daily actions, and then learning how to direct them with purpose. Think of it as a shortcut, maybe, to getting really well informed about something that shapes literally every part of your life.
Okay, let's dig into this author's journey a bit more, because it's not just theory for him, is it? He actually lived these principles through some really tough stuff.
So absolutely. He loved baseball. His dad even played minor leaguer for the St. Louis Cardinals, so, that
Yeah.
dream of playing professionally was huge for him.
Right.
But after that horrific injury, his return to the field was, well, anything but smooth. Months of rehab.
I bet.
Then tryouts came around. He was the only junior cut from the varsity team, sent down to play with the sophomores on junior varsity.
Ouch, after everything he'd been through. That must have stung.
Crushing humiliation is how he describes it. Think about it, playing since age 4, pouring everything into it, sidelined by this freak accident, and then basically rejected. He talks about sitting in his car, just crying, flipping through radio stations trying to find a song to make him feel better.
Wow. That's raw. It's that feeling of hitting rock bottom in something you care deeply about. Many of us can probably relate to that in some area of life.
Totally. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite that deep self-doubt, that major setback, something shifted. We see this gradual, almost unbelievable climb back.
How so?
As a senior, he made the varsity team. Okay, good step. Then, at Denison University, he was chosen as the top male athlete.
Okay, that's impressive.
It gets better. Named to the ESPN Academic All-America team. That's an honor given to just 33 players nationally across all divisions.
Whoa. From getting cut in high school to that.
Exactly. By graduation, he was in the school record books in 8 different categories and got the university's highest academic honor, the President's Medal.
So this wasn't some overnight miracle recovery.
Not at all. It was the compounding effect of consistent, small, almost invisible improvements, day after day after day, applying those tiny habits.
And this mindset, it didn't just stay in athletics, did it?
No, that's what's really fascinating. It transitioned into his professional life.
Yeah.
He started writing. He admits he felt like a total imposter for the first couple of years before his book deal.
Many writers feel that way starting out.
True. But by 2015, his newsletter had grown to 200,000 subscribers, apparently one of the fastest growing on the internet at the time. That momentum, that led directly to the book deal with Penguin Random House for Atomic Habits.
So the writing itself was built on these principles.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
And his influence just kept snowballing. By 2016, his articles are in Time, Entrepreneur, Forbes, reaching over 8 million people that year alone.
Wow.
And it wasn't just, casual readers. Coaches in the NFL, NBA, MLB, they were reading his stuff, sharing it with their teams. They saw the practical value.
That's huge validation.
Then, early 2017, he launches the Habits Academy, becomes his premier training platform. Over 10,000 leaders, managers, coaches, teachers have graduated from it, applying these ideas everywhere.
Incredible reach.
And get this, by 2018, as he's finishing the book, his website's getting millions of visitors a month, nearly 500,000 email subscribers. This whole journey from being cut from a high school team to becoming this world-renowned expert on habits, a successful entrepreneur.
Is a living example of his own teaching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He literally built his life back and then built this whole platform, one small habit at a time.
Which brings us to that quote, right? The one from Naval Ravikant.
Yeah, to write a great book, you must first become the book.
Yeah.
Clear absolutely lived these ideas. He had to rely on small habits to recover physically, to get stronger, perform on the field, and to pivot, become a writer, build a business, just developed into a responsible adult.
Small habits helped him fulfill his potential across the board. Physical, intellectual, entrepreneurial.
Right. And the connection for you, listening right now, is that the path to fulfilling your potential, whatever that looks like for you, career, health, relationships, it doesn't lie in these grand, sweeping gestures.
It's not about the massive overhaul.
No. It's in the consistent, dedicated application of tiny atomic habits. His journey is just this compelling, living proof of what's possible when you really embrace that philosophy.
Okay, so let's zoom out a bit from his personal story to, one of the most famous examples of what he calls the aggregation of marginal gains.
Yes. British cycling.
Exactly. British cycling. For almost 100 years, professional cyclists in Great Britain were, well, let's be honest.
Pretty mediocre.
Yeah, frankly. Since 1908, they'd won just one Olympic gold medal in cycling. One. And in 110 years, no British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France.
It was bad. So bad, in fact, that a top European bike manufacturer actually refused to sell them bikes.
Wait, seriously? Why?
They were afraid it would hurt their sales if other pros saw the Brits using their gear. They were that underwhelming.
Rejected for being too bad. That's rough. So how do you turn around a century of, well, not winning?
Right. In 2003, British Cycling hires Dave Brailsford as their new performance director.
Yeah.
His strategy, radical in its simplicity, the aggregation of marginal gains.
Okay, break that down. What does it mean?
The philosophy was basically to look for a tiny margin of improvement in absolutely everything you do. Brailsford put it perfectly.
Yeah.
If you broke down everything you could think of that goes into riding a bike and then improve it by 1%, you will get a significant increase when you put them all together.
1%. That sounds manageable, but in everything.
Oh yeah, they took it seriously.
Mm.
Not just the obvious stuff like, bike mechanics or rider nutrition. They looked at the comfort of the bike seats, the grip of the tires, the type of massage gel used after rides.
Massage gel, really?
Seriously. They even hired a surgeon to teach the riders the best way to wash their hands to reduce chances of catching a cold. They tested different pillows, mattresses for optimal sleep. They even experimented with different laundry detergents to make the clothes more comfortable, thinking that might improve rest.
That is obsessive attention to detail, tiny, tiny optimizations.
Relentless.
Correct.
Across the board.
Yeah.
And the results, absolutely remarkable.
Tell us, what happened?
Within just 5 years, British cycling dominated the sport. At the 2008 Beijing Olympics, they won an astonishing 60% of the available gold medals in cycling.
60% from basically zero.
Pretty much. 4 years later, London Olympics 2012, they pushed it even further. 70% of the gold medals.
70, that's insane dominance.
British riders, like Chris Froome, started winning the Tour de France multiple times. Between 2007 and 2017, get this, 178 world championships and 66 Paralympic gold medals.
Wow, that truly shows the power of those tiny 1% improvements just compounding over time.
It really does. And the math itself is pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah, explain that 1% thing again.
If you manage to get just 1% better each day for a year, you don't end up 365% better. You end up 37 times better by the end. The compounding effect is huge.
37 times.
Conversely, if you get 1% worse each day for a year, you decline nearly down to 0. So what starts as this small win, or maybe a minor setback, it accumulates into something much, much bigger, often without us even noticing it day to day.
It's like this hidden engine just quietly working in the background, transforming things.
Exactly. And connecting this to the bigger picture for you, it means that real success, lasting success, it's the product of your daily habits, not these once-in-a-lifetime transformations we sometimes chase.
So focus less on the big dramatic moments.
Right. What truly matters is whether your habits are consistently putting you on the path towards success. You should be far more concerned with your current trajectory than your current results.
Trajectory over results. Okay, that's a big shift.
Think about it. If you're a millionaire, but you spend more than you earn every single month, your results look great now, but your trajectory's bad. It's not going to end well if those habits don't change.
Right. Versus someone who's broke.
But saves even a tiny amount each month. Their current result isn't impressive, but their trajectory is good. They're on the path toward financial freedom, even if it feels incredibly slow at the start.
So our outcomes are just lagging measures of our habits.
Precisely. Your net worth, lagging measure of financial habits. Your weight, lagging measure of eating habits. Your knowledge, lagging measure of learning habits. Clutter, lagging measure of cleaning habits. It's simple, really. You get what you repeat.
Wow. So if you want to predict where you'll end up, just follow the curve of those tiny gains or losses.
Pretty much. See how your daily choices will compound 10, 20 years down the line? Are you spending less than you earn? Are you getting to the gym each week, even briefly? Reading, learning something new. These tiny battles, they define your future self.
And it works for negative stuff too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about major societal outrage or protests. They rarely happen because of one single event. Usually it's a long series of microaggressions, daily frustrations that build and multiply until one event finally tips the scales. Time magnifies the margin between success and failure, good or bad. This brings us to a really crucial point about building habits. Progress is almost never linear, and that can be incredibly frustrating, demotivating if you're not expecting it.
Right. You expect steady improvement, but it doesn't always work like that.
Exactly. Imagine you have an ice cube. It's sitting on a table in a cold room, say 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay.
I've got it. Cold room, ice cube.
Now the room starts to heat up slowly, 1 degree at a time, 26 degrees, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. What's happening to the ice cube?
Nothing. It's still frozen solid.
Exactly. All that effort, all that increasing temperature, but zero visible result. You might feel like, what's the point? This isn't working.
Yeah, I can see how that would be frustrating.
But then the temperature hits 32 degrees. And what happens?
It melts instantly.
Boom, it melts. That's the analogy for what the author calls the plateau of latent potential and that frustrating period beforehand, the valley of disappointment.
The valley of disappointment. I like that term. It captures the feeling.
It really does. Because people expect progress to be linear. You put in the work, days, weeks, sometimes months, and when you don't see those tangible, immediate results, you get discouraged.
Like, I've been running every day for a month. Why don't I look different? Why hasn't the scale moved?
Precisely. And that frustration, that's often when people give up right before the breakthrough. It's a hallmark of any compounding process. Most powerful outcomes are delayed.
But the work wasn't wasted during that time, was it? In the valley.
Not at all. It was being stored. Like the energy building up in that ice cube, all the action, the real change happens at that critical threshold, 32 degrees.
So those overnight successes we hear about.
They're almost never overnight. They're just the dramatic public event. What you don't see is the long, often invisible, consistent work that came before. It's like the human equivalent of geological pressure. just building and building behind the scenes.
So if you're listening and you find yourself struggling to build a good habit or maybe break a bad one,
It doesn't necessarily mean you've failed or you've lost your ability to improve or that there's something fundamentally wrong with you.
right?
It's often just because you haven't crossed that plateau of latent potential yet, complaining about not seeing results despite working hard. It's like complaining about the ice cube not melting when you heated it from 25 to 31 degrees.
Your work isn't wasted, it's just being stored, waiting for that tipping point.
Exactly. So the insight for you, our listener, is really understanding that success isn't built on those sudden breakthroughs. It's built on the relentless, often invisible accumulation of effort that comes before them.
So the key is persistence. Don't let that valley of disappointment derail you.
Keep showing up. Keep putting in the work. Because that breakthrough, that overnight success, it might be just 1 degree away. It's not if the ice will melt. It's when you hit that crucial temperature. Trust the process. Now, this whole idea leads us to a really important, maybe even radical shift in how we think about personal change. You know, the common advice, the prevailing wisdom, it always tells us to set specific, actionable goals.
Yeah, smart goals and all that. For getting in shape, building a business, being a better parent, goals for everything.
Right. But the author argues that this goals-first mentality actually has some significant, often overlooked problems.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued. Like, what are the problems with goals?
Well, the first one's actually pretty simple when you think about it. Winners and losers often have the exact same goal.
Oh, okay. Example.
Think about the Olympics. Every single athlete showing up, their goal is to win a gold medal. Every single one. But how many actually do?
Only one, usually, or one team.
Exactly. So the goal itself clearly doesn't differentiate success. If achieving the goal was all that mattered, everyone who said it would achieve it. Success obviously depends on more than just stating a goal.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. It's about what happens after you set the goal. What's problem number 2?
Problem number 2. Achieving a goal is often only a momentary change, a temporary fix.
How so?
Okay, imagine you have a super messy room. Your goal, clean the room. You muster up the energy, you tidy everything up, and boom, for now you have a clean room. Goal achieved
Feels good.
for a moment. But if you keep the same sloppy pack rat habits that led to the messy room in the first place, what's going to happen?
It's going to get messy again pretty quickly.
Exactly. You end up chasing the same outcome over and over because you never changed the underlying system behind it. You treated a symptom, the messy room, without addressing the habits that created it.
Okay. So it's counterintuitive. We think we need to change our results, but the results aren't really the problem.
Right. What we really need to change are the systems that cause those results. When you solve problems only at the results level, you solve them temporarily. To improve for good, you have to solve problems at the systems level, fix the inputs, and the outputs will eventually fix themselves.
Fix the inputs. I like that. Okay. What's the third problem with goals?
Problem 3. Goals can actually restrict your happiness.
How? Sounds weird.
Think about the implicit assumption behind many goals. Once I reach my goal, then I'll be happy.
Yeah, okay. I've definitely thought that way before. Once I lose 10 pounds, once I get that promotion.
We all do. But that mentality means you're constantly putting happiness off until the next milestone. You're deferring contentment to some future achievement that may or may not happen exactly as planned.
Plus, goals can create this kind of either-or conflict, right? Either I achieve the goal and I'm a success, or I fail and I'm a disappointment.
Exactly. You mentally box yourself into this very narrow version of happiness. But life's path is rarely a straight line, is it? It's unlikely your actual journey will perfectly match the one you envisioned when you set out. So it makes no sense to restrict your satisfaction to just one scenario when there are actually many different paths to success and fulfillment.
So the antidote to all this is a systems-first mentality.
That's the argument. When you fall in love with the process, rather than just the product or the outcome, you don't have to wait to give yourself permission to be happy.
Because happiness is available anytime the system is running.
Exactly. You can be satisfied anytime your system is working. And a system can succeed in many different forms, not just the one specific outcome you first envisioned.
Okay, so let's nail this down. What is a system in this context? Give me some examples.
Sure. A system is basically the collection of daily habits and processes that lead to an outcome. So if a coach's goal is to win a championship, their system is how they recruit players, manage their assistant coaches, design and run practices every day. For an entrepreneur, the goal might be $1 million business. The system is how they test product ideas, how they hire employees, how they run their marketing campaigns week after week.
Right.
A musician's goal might be to play a complex new piece perfectly. Their system is how often they practice, how they break down the difficult measures, their method for getting feedback, and how they integrate it. It's the repeatable process that consistently leads toward the desired outcomes.
Got it. Focus on the process, the system. Now, this seems to lead into the deepest level of change, identity.
Absolutely. This is where it gets really powerful. The author talks about 3 layers of behavior change. There's outcome change, that's your results, like losing weight or publishing a book.
Okay.
Then there's process change, that's changing your habits and systems, like implementing a new workout routine or organizing your workspace.
Right, the how.
And then the deepest layer, identity change. This is changing your beliefs about yourself,
Yeah.
your self-image, your worldview, your judgments about yourself and others.
Identity, like who you believe you are.
Exactly. And the most effective way to change your habits, he argues, is not to focus on what you want to achieve, the outcome, but on who you wish to become, the identity.
Whoa, okay. Flip the script entirely. Start with identity.
It's a profound idea, because your identity doesn't just dictate your habits, it actually emerges from them. Every single action you take. It's like casting a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
A vote. How so?
Every time you sit down and write a page, you're casting a vote for, I am a writer. Every time you go to the gym, you cast a vote for, I am an athlete. Every time you practice an instrument, you cast a vote for, I am a musician.
So actions shape identity.
Precisely. Becoming the best version of yourself isn't about flipping a switch. It requires you to continuously edit your beliefs, to upgrade and expand your identity based on the evidence of your actions. There's an ongoing process of self-creation, vote by vote,
And the real reason habits matter then isn't just the results they get you.
although they certainly do that. But the deeper reason is that they can fundamentally change your beliefs about yourself.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say, I'm the type of person who wants this.
Like, I want to be healthy.
Right. It's something entirely different and far more powerful to say, I'm the type of person who is this.
I am healthy. I am a runner. I am a reader.
Exactly. And think about pride. When you have pride in a particular aspect of your identity, maybe you're proud of your hair or your biceps or the scarves you knit, you become incredibly motivated to maintain the habits associated with it.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to mess it up.
Right. You'll develop all sorts of routines to care for your hair. You'll make sure you never skip that upper body workout. You'll happily spend hours knitting each week. Once your pride gets involved, you'll fight tooth and nail to maintain those habits because they are part of who you are.
So true behavior change is identity change.
At its core, yes, that's the ultimate form of intrinsic motivation. Okay, so to really understand how to build these identity-shaping habits, we need to dig into the science a bit. How do habits actually work in the brain?
Yeah, let's get into the nuts and bolts.
Well, the brain is incredibly efficient. Think about when you encounter a totally new situation. Your brain is working overtime, right? Analyzing, making conscious decisions, trying to make sense of all the new information.
Right, lots of conscious effort.
But then sometimes you stumble across a solution, often by accident. Maybe you're feeling anxious, and you discover that going for a run really calms you down. Or you're mentally wiped out after work, and you learn that playing video games helps you relax. You're exploring, and then bam, you get a reward.
Ah, the brain notices that connection. This action led to a good feeling.
Exactly. It remembers that. After you experience an unexpected reward, you naturally alter your strategy for next time. Habits really are just memories. They're memories of the steps you previously followed to solve a recurring problem in your environment.
So when the situation comes up again,
Your brain automatically applies that same solution. It remembers the past, primarily to better predict what will work in the future.
that makes sense. It saves mental energy.
Precisely. Habit formation is incredibly useful because our conscious mind,
Yeah.
it's like a bottleneck. It can really only pay attention to one problem at a time. So your brain is always working to preserve your conscious attention for whatever task is most essential right now.
So it offloads routine tasks.
Whenever possible, yes. The conscious mind loves to pawn off tasks to the non-conscious mind to do automatically. And that's exactly what happens when a habit forms. Habits reduce your cognitive load, they free up mental capacity, so you can allocate your attention to other, maybe newer or more complex challenges.
So building habits now lets you do more of what you want later, kind of on autopilot.
That's a great way to put it. And this whole process of building a habit, it can be broken down into 4 simple steps that form this continuous loop. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
Cue, craving, response, reward. Okay.
This four-step pattern is the backbone of every single habit, good or bad. And your brain runs through these steps in the exact same order every single time.
All right, let's break those down. First up, cue.
The cue, this is the trigger. It's the bit of information that predicts a reward is coming. Our prehistoric ancestors. They paid attention to cues, signaling primary rewards, things essential for survival like food, water, sex.
Basic needs.
Right. Today, we also learn cues that predict secondary rewards. Things like money, fame, power, status, praise, approval, love, friendship, or even just a sense of personal satisfaction. These things don't keep us alive directly, but they indirectly improve our odds of survival and reproduction. So your mind is constantly scanning your internal and external environment looking for these cues.
Okay, so the cue triggers it. Next, craving.
The craving. This is the motivational force behind every habit. Without some level of motivation or desire, without craving a change, we have no reason to act. What you crave isn't the habit itself, but the change in state it delivers.
Ah, okay, so you don't crave smoking a cigarette.
You crave the feeling of relief it provides, maybe stress reduction or a social connection. You don't crave turning on the TV, you crave the feeling of being entertained or relaxed. Cravings are about wanting to change your internal state. And their subjective different cues trigger cravings in different people.
Got it. Cue triggers a craving for a change in state. Then comes the response.
The response. This is the actual habit you perform, which could be a thought or an action. Whether a response happens depends on a couple of things. First, how motivated you are, how strong is that craving? And second, how much friction is associated with the behavior.
Friction, like how hard it is to do.
Exactly. How much effort are you willing to expend? If an action requires more physical or mental effort than you're willing to put in at that moment, you just won't do it. Your response also depends on your ability. You can't dunk a basketball if you can't jump high enough, no matter how easy it looks.
Makes sense. Motivation, friction, ability. And finally, the reward.
The reward. This is the end goal of every habit. The cue is about noticing the reward. The craving is about wanting the reward. The response is about obtaining the reward. And we chase rewards for two main reasons.
Okay, what are they?
First, rewards satisfy our craving. They deliver the benefit. Food gives energy. Promotion brings money and respect. Getting in shape improves health and dating prospects. But more immediately, rewards deliver contentment, relief from that craving, a moment of satisfaction.
Ah, the payoff. And the second reason.
Second, rewards teach us. They teach us which actions are worth remembering in the future. They signal to your brain, hey, that worked, that felt good, let's do that again next time this cue pops up. Rewards complete the feedback loop.
Cue, craving, response, reward, and back to cue.
Exactly. It's a neurological feedback loop that allows you to create automatic habits. It's this endless cycle that runs every moment you're alive, constantly scanning the environment, predicting outcomes, trying out responses, learning from the results, often happening in a split second without us even consciously realizing it.
Wow, so we can kind of split these 4 steps into 2 phases, right?
Yeah, that's helpful. You've got the problem phase.
Yeah.
Cue plus craving. That's when you realize something needs to change. You notice something, cue, and you want something, craving.
Okay, the problem.
And then you've got the solution phase, response plus reward. That's when you take action and achieve the change. You take action, response, and you get something satisfying, reward.
Problem phase, solution phase. Understanding this loop feels fundamental if you want to intentionally design your habits.
It absolutely is. It gives us the framework for the 4 laws of behavior change.
Okay, that brings us neatly to the first law of behavior change, make it obvious. And you mentioned that habits can become automatic, even unconscious. That sounds potentially dangerous.
It can be. What's really crucial to get here is that habits can start without you even being consciously aware of the initial cue. Think about hunger. It can arise from hormones circulating in your body. You don't have to see a cookie to realize it's time to eat. Your body just gradually lets you know.
Right, it's an internal cue.
Exactly. So you can notice an opportunity and take action without dedicating conscious attention to it, which, as you said, makes habits efficient, but also potentially hazardous. As habits form, your actions often fall under the direction of your automatic non-conscious mind.
So you slip into old patterns without even thinking.
Yeah, before you even realize what's happening. Like, the author mentions a former lifeguard who sometimes still yells, walk, when he sees a kid running near a pool years later. Or maybe you cover your mouth when you laugh or apologize before asking a question. These things become automatic.
Little programmed responses.
And over time, the actual cues that spark our habits become so common, they're essentially invisible. Treats on the kitchen counter, the remote right next to the couch, your phone buzzing in your pocket. Our responses get so deeply encoded that the urge to act can feel like it comes out of nowhere.
Which is why awareness is the first step.
Absolutely. Behavior change has to start with awareness. Remember that Carl Jung quote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You got to see the patterns first.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? How do we become aware of these invisible forces shaping us?
Well, one really practical strategy is something called the habit scorecard. It's simple but powerful.
What is it?
You literally just write down your current habits throughout the day. All of them. Wake up, check phone, brush teeth, make coffee, watch TV, list them out. Then you mark each one as positive, plus negative, or neutral, based on whether it helps you become the person you want to be.
Ah, so it forces you to actually look at what you're doing automatically.
Exactly. Are you mindlessly scrolling? Reaching for a snack every time you walk into the kitchen? Writing it down makes those automatic actions visible, undeniable.
Okay, that's one tool. What else?
Another really clever technique for raising awareness is pointing and calling.
Pointing and calling. What's that? Sounds kind of funny.
It does. But it's a serious safety system used by the Japanese railway system, which is like one of the best and safest in the world.
Okay. How does it work?
As each train operator runs the train, they physically point at different important objects and call out the observation. Like, point at the signal, say signal is green. Point at the speedometer, say speed reads 120. Point at the schedule, say on time.
They actually say it out loud.
Out loud.
Hmm.
It seems redundant, but it transforms a non-conscious habit, just glancing at things, into a conscious act. Because they have to use their eyes, hands, mouth, and ears, they're far more likely to notice problems or errors before something goes wrong.
Yeah.
It drastically reduced accidents.
Wow. So how can we use that? We're not driving trains.
You can apply it to your own habits, especially bad ones you want to curb. Let's say you're trying to cut back on junk food, but you find yourself reaching for another cookie.
Yeah. Happens.
Try saying out loud, "I am about to eat this cookie, but I don't need it. Eating it will cause me to gain weight and hurt my health."
Ooh, that feels awkward, but I see the point.
It makes the consequences seem more real, right? It adds weight to the action instead of just letting yourself mindlessly slip into the old routine. It forces that moment of conscious thought. Do I really want to do this? It's also great for remembering things, like saying, "I am locking the front door," as you do it.
Okay, awareness is key. But the law is make it obvious. So beyond just noticing habits, we need to make the cues for good habits more obvious, right?
Exactly. And one of the best ways to do that is using implementation intentions.
Implementation intentions, fancy name. What is it?
It's basically making a specific plan for when and where you will perform a habit. The format is simple. I will behavior at time and location.
Okay, give me some example.
Sure, instead of saying I'll meditate more, you say I will meditate for 1 minute at 7 a.m. in my kitchen. Instead of I should study, it's I will study Spanish for 20 minutes at 6 p.m. in my bedroom. Or I will exercise for 1 hour at 5 p.m. in my local gym. Or even I will make my partner a cup of tea at 8 a.m. in the kitchen.
Ugh, very specific. Time and location locked in. Why does that help so much?
Two main reasons. First, being specific helps you say no to distractions that derail you. Vague goals like, I want to eat healthier, make it easy to rationalize little exceptions all day long. But a specific plan gives you clarity.
Right.
Second, by giving your habit a specific time and place, you make the cues super obvious. With enough repetition, you'll actually start to get an urge to do the right thing at the right time, almost automatically. Your brain gets conditioned. 7 a.m. in the kitchen, time to meditate.
Like Pavlov's dog salivating at the bell?
Kinda, yeah. You're conditioning yourself to respond to that specific time and place cue.
Okay, what about habit stacking? That sounds interesting too.
Yeah, this one builds on a psychological principle called the Diderot effect. Basically, getting one new thing often creates this spiral where you feel you need other new things to match it. Like you buy a new dress.
And then suddenly you need new shoes and earrings to go with it.
Exactly. Or you buy a new couch, and suddenly the whole living room needs rethinking. It's a chain reaction. Human behaviors often follow this pattern too. One action triggers the next.
So how does habit stacking use that?
With habit stacking, you link a new desired habit to an existing habit that's already part of your daily routine. The formula is, after current habit, I never leave second.
Okay, simple enough.
The secret is picking the right current habit as the cue. because the time and location are already built into that existing routine.
Give me an example.
Okay, let's say you already make coffee every morning. That's your current habit. You can stack.
Yeah.
After I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. Or maybe after I take off my work shoes when I get home, I'll immediately change into my workout clothes.
Ah, so you piggyback the new habit onto something you already do without thinking.
Exactly. And again, specificity helps. Not just when I get home, but after I close the front door or after I brush my teeth. Use that habit scorecard to identify your existing routines and find the perfect trigger point.
Makes sense. So make the cue specific in time and location, or link it to an existing habit. What else falls under make it obvious?
A huge one is designing your environment. We tend to think we're totally in control of our choices, but our surroundings have a massive influence.
How so?
Well, think about shopping. Economists talk about suggestion impulse buying. Stores place expensive brands at eye level. They put tempting items near the checkout. You buy things not just because you want them, but because of how they're presented to you.
The environment nudges you.
Constantly. The more obviously available something is, the more likely you are to choose it. Think about why Bud Light is in almost every bar, or Starbucks seems to be on every corner. It's the obvious, easy option. Many of our actions are shaped not by purposeful choice, but simply by the most obvious option available.
And our most powerful sense is vision, right?
By far. So, if you want to encourage good habits, make the cues visually obvious in your environment.
Like the fly in the urinal story.
Exactly. The famous example from Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam, they etched a small image resembling a housefly near the drain of each urinal. What happened? Men apparently aimed for the fly. Spillage drastically reduced by 8% annually. Cleaning costs went down. All from a tiny visual cue.
Hilarious but effective.
Totally. And the author noticed this himself with food. If fruit was in a bowl on the counter, he'd eat fruit. If cookies were there, he'd eat cookies. The visible cue drove the action.
So be intentional about what's visible.
Right. Want to remember to take your medication? Put the bottle right next to the bathroom faucet where you'll see it every morning. Want to practice guitar more? Don't hide it in the closet. Put it on a stand in the living room. Want to send more thank you notes? Keep stationery out on your desk. Want to drink more water? Fill up a few water bottles and place them in common locations around your home or office.
So we need to be the architect of our environment, not just the consumer of it.
Beautifully put. Alter your spaces to increase your exposure to positive cues, and just as importantly, reduce your exposure to negative ones.
Now, you mentioned context becoming the cue too. How does that work?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Habits often become associated not just with a single trigger, but with the entire context surrounding the behavior. Like, many people find they drink more alcohol in social situations than they would alone. The entire social environment becomes the cue.
Or maybe you always snack when you sit on a specific couch to watch TV.
Exactly. The couch itself becomes part of the cue for snacking. This context dependency is powerful. There was a study with insomniacs.
Yeah.
They were instructed to only get into bed when they felt tired. If they couldn't sleep, they had to get up and leave the room. They were only allowed back in bed when sleepy. Over time, their brain began to associate the context of the bed only with the action of sleeping, not with tossing and turning or checking their phone. It made it easier for them to fall asleep quickly.
So the context conditioned the response.
Right. And this reveals a really useful strategy.
Yeah.
Sometimes, habits are easier to change in a new environment
Why is that?
because you escape all those subtle triggers and cues from your old life that prompt your current habits. Try going to a new coffee shop to work instead of your usual spot. Find a park bench you've never sat on before to start a new reading routine. Use a corner of your room you seldom use for your meditation practice. It's often easier to associate a new habit with a totally new context than to try and build it in the face of existing competing cues.
What if getting a new environment isn't practical?
Then redefine or rearrange your current one. The mantra, one space, one use, can be incredibly helpful here.
One space, one use.
Yeah. Try not to do work in the place where you relax. Don't eat in front of the TV if you can help it.
Yeah.
The author talks about his own experience as an entrepreneur. He used to work from his couch or kitchen table and found it really hard to mentally switch off in the evenings because there was no clear division.
The context was mixed.
Exactly. When he eventually got a separate office space, work happened in here and personal life happened out there. That clear physical boundary made it much easier to turn off his professional brain and relax.
So avoid mixing the context for your habits. Like, don't try to work productively on the same couch where you binge watch shows.
Ideally, yes. It's why our phones can be tricky. They're so versatile, great for productivity, but also conditioned for social media, News, games, it's this mishmash of conflicting cues all in one device. A stable environment where everything has its clear place and purpose. That fosters stable, predictable behaviors. Focus can come more automatically in your designated workspace. Relaxation can come more easily in your designated chill-out zone.
Okay, this makes a lot of sense for building good habits. Make the cues obvious. What about the flip side? Getting rid of bad habits using this law.
This is where the concept of the secret to self-control comes in, making bad habits invisible.
Invisible.
By removing the cues from your environment. There was a stunning discovery made back during the Vietnam War. Research showed that over 15%, maybe even up to 20%, of U.S. soldiers stationed there had become addicted to heroin.
Wow, that's a huge number.
A massive problem. But here's the kicker. When these soldiers returned home, researchers followed up, and they found that 90% of those addicted soldiers did not relapse back into heroin addiction once they were back in the States. 9 out of 10.
90% didn't relapse. That completely goes against what you usually hear about heroin addiction.
Totally. And the reason? Their environment had fundamentally changed. All the cues associated with drug use in Vietnam, the stress, the availability, the social context, were gone. When the cues disappeared, so did the habit for most of them.
Compare that to typical rehab clinics.
Right, where studies often show a 90% relapse rate for heroin users who returned from rehab back to their old neighborhoods, surrounded by all the old cues and triggers.
So it suggests that maybe disciplined people aren't necessarily born with more willpower.
They might just be better at structuring their lives to avoid tempting situations in the first place. It's simply easier to practice self-restraint when you don't have to use it constantly because the temptations aren't right there in your face.
Remove the cue, remove the need for willpower.
Largely, yes. Because once a habit is encoded in your brain, the urge to act often follows whenever the environmental cue is present again. There's a story about a therapist, Patty Alwell, who used to smoke. She quit for years. But she used to smoke specifically when she rode horses. Decades later, she got on a horse again for the first time, and she instantly craved a cigarette like crazy, even though she hadn't smoked in ages. The context, the cue, was still powerful. It's called cue-induced wanting, external triggers sparking that desire, even when the habit seems long gone.
So just trying to resist temptation head-on is probably not the best strategy.
It's often ineffective and just drains your energy. Your willpower is a limited resource. Rarely does someone consistently stick to positive habits if they're constantly swimming in an environment filled with negative cues.
So the reliable approach.
Cut bad habits off at the source. Reduce your exposure to the cue that causes them. Make it invisible.
Give me some practical examples. How do we make bad habits invisible?
Okay. If you can't get focused work done, leave your phone in another room for a few hours. Feeling inadequate after scrolling social media. Ruthlessly unfollow accounts that trigger that feeling. Watching too much TV. Move the television out of the bedroom. Can't stop playing video games. Unplug the console and put it away in a closet after each use. Add friction by removing the cue.
Okay, law 1. Make it obvious. Got it. Let's move on to the second law. Make it attractive. What's the science behind this one?
This one really involves understanding the role of dopamine, a key neurotransmitter in our brains. For a long time, scientists thought dopamine was just about pleasure, the pleasure chemical.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But it turns out it's much more complex. Yes, it's involved in pleasure, but it also plays a central role in motivation, learning, memory, even punishment, and voluntary movement. It's incredibly multifaceted.
Okay, so what's the key insight about dopamine and habits?
The really crucial takeaway is that dopamine is released not only when you experience pleasure, but also, and perhaps more importantly, for habits when you anticipate it.
Anticipation. So wanting it releases dopamine too.
Yes. And often, the dopamine spike from anticipation can be even greater than the spike from actually getting the reward. Think about it. As a kid, wasn't the excitement leading up to Christmas morning sometimes better than actually opening the gifts?
Huh. Yeah, sometimes the buildup was the best part.
Or as an adult, daydreaming about an upcoming vacation might feel more enjoyable than parts of the vacation itself.
Yeah.
Scientists call this the difference between wanting and liking. Your brain actually dedicates far more neural circuitry, more brain real estate, to the wanting the desire than to the liking the actual enjoyment once you get it.
Wow. So the chase is often more neurologically potent than the catch.
In many ways, yes. And this powerful wanting system is what gets hijacked by highly habit-forming behaviors like drugs, junk food, video games, social media likes. It's also deeply involved in our basic drives for food, water, sex, and social interaction. It's all driven by that dopamine-fueled anticipation of a reward.
And modern life kind of throws this into overdrive, doesn't it, with supernormal stimuli?
Oh, absolutely. Supernormal stimuli are basically exaggerated versions of reality that trigger a stronger response than the natural stimulus itself.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, in the animal world, scientists found that herring gull chicks will peck furiously at a fake beak with red spots, even more so if the spots are bigger and redder than a real beak's. Or a gray-lag goose will try to roll a giant billiard ball into its nest because it's an exaggerated version of an egg. Bigger must be better, right?
Their instincts get tricked by the exaggeration.
Exactly. And we humans are surrounded by supernormal stimuli today. Think about mannequins in store windows with impossible proportions designed to make clothes look better. Or social media likes and notifications giving us more frequent hits of social approval than we'd ever get offline. Junk food is engineered with levels of salt, sugar, and fat far beyond what occurs in nature. Online porn offers novelty and exaggeration beyond real-life partners. Photoshopped ads create beauty standards that are literally unreal.
So these things hijack our natural desires by amplifying the cues.
Precisely. They exaggerate the features that are naturally attractive to us, driving our ancient instincts wild and leading to excessive habits, over-shopping, obsessive social media use, overeating, and so on. Our brains just aren't equipped to handle these hyper-palatable, super-attractive modern stimuli gracefully.
Okay, so if anticipation and attractiveness are so powerful, how do we leverage that for good habits, make the right things more attractive?
One really effective strategy is called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. Okay, sounds fun.
It is. There's a great story about an electrical engineering student in Dublin named Ronan Byrne. He knew he should exercise more, but he really loved watching Netflix.
A common dilemma.
Right. So being an engineer, he hacked his stationary bike. He connected it to his laptop and wrote a program. The program would only allow Netflix to run if he was cycling at a certain minimum speed.
No way. So if he slowed down.
His show would pause automatically. He had to keep pedaling to keep watching. He jokingly called it eliminating obesity one Netflix binge at a time.
That is brilliant. He bundled the temptation Netflix with the habit he needed to do, cycling.
Exactly. He linked an action he wanted to do with an action he needed to do. So the formula for temptation bundling is pretty simple. 1, after my current habit, I will the habit I need. 2, after the habit I need, I will the habit I want.
Okay, walk me through another example.
Sure. Let's say you want to get better at checking emails, but you really want to check Instagram. You could bundle 1, after I get my morning coffee, current habit, I will spend 15 minutes clearing my inbox, habit I need. 2, after I clear my inbox for 15 minutes, I will check Instagram, habit I want.
Ah, so the want becomes the immediate reward for doing the need.
Precisely. It makes the less attractive need habit more attractive because it's immediately followed by something you genuinely desire. It creates this heightened, more appealing version of the habit you're trying to build.
Okay, temptation bundling. Makes sense. What else makes habits attractive? You mentioned social influence earlier.
Yes, the seductive pull of social norms is incredibly powerful. Humans are fundamentally herd animals. We have this deep, deep-seated desire to belong, to fit in, to earn the respect and approval of our peers.
It's evolutionary, right? Safety in numbers.
Absolutely. For most of human history, being ostracized from the tribe was basically a death sentence. The lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. Those who collaborated and fit in enjoyed increased safety, better mating opportunities, more access to resources. So that desire to belong is baked into our DNA.
And this affects our habits how?
Well, we don't even choose our earliest habits consciously, do we? We imitate, we follow the script handed down by the groups we belong to, our family, our friends, our church, school, local community, society at large. These social norms are like invisible rules guiding our behavior every day.
We just absorb them.
We absorb them. We often follow the habits of our culture without even thinking about it, questioning it, or sometimes even realizing it. As the French philosopher Montaigne wrote, the customs and practices of life and society sweep us along.
And usually fitting in feels good, right? It doesn't feel like a burden.
Most of the time, no. Behaviors become attractive to us when they help us fit in. If you grow up in a family that really values and rewards chess skills, playing chess is likely going to seem like an attractive way to spend your time. If everyone at your new job wears expensive suits, you'll probably feel an inclination to splurge on one yourself to fit the norm. We want to be seen as part of the group.
Okay, so we imitate the group. Are there specific groups whose habits we tend to copy more?
Yes, the author highlights 3 key groups we tend to imitate: the close, the many, and the powerful.
Okay, let's break those down. First, the close.
This is pretty intuitive. We imitate the habits of people closest to us, our family, our friends, our partners. Their habits normalize behaviors for us. There was a famous study showing that a person's chances of becoming obese increased by 57% if they had a close friend who became obese.
57%, just from a friend.
Yeah. We just naturally soak up the habits and standards of those around us, often without even realizing it. We want to align with the people we spend the most time with and care about. Surrounding yourself with people who have the habits you want is one of the most effective ways to change your own.
Okay, that's the close. What about the many?
This refers to imitating the habits of the majority, the tribe, the culture. We're constantly scanning our environment to see what normal behavior looks like, and we tend to conform. Why do we check reviews on Amazon or Yelp or TripAdvisor?
To see what everyone else thinks is good, to follow the crowd.
Exactly. We want to imitate the best buying habits, eating habits, travel habits, based on the wisdom of the crowd. And usually it's a smart strategy. There's often evidence in numbers. But sometimes the pressure to conform can be so strong that it overrides even better judgment, like chimpanzees sticking to an inferior nut-cracking method just because it's what the rest of the group does.
We want to blend in, even if it's not optimal.
Right. The normal behavior of the tribe often overpowers the desired behavior of the individual.
Okay, the close, the many, and the powerful.
Yes, we also imitate the habits of people who have power, prestige, and status. Humans everywhere pursue these things. We crave respect, approval, admiration.
Why is that?
Historically, having a higher status meant better access to resources, more safety, more attractive mates. It signaled success. So we are naturally drawn to behaviors that might earn us that status. We copy successful people, maybe their marketing strategies, their recipes, their writing styles, even the communication style of our boss.
We figure if it works for them.
Maybe it'll work for me and get me some of that respect and approval too. High-status people enjoy the approval of others, and we are wired to imitate whatever earns that approval. It makes those behaviors seem inherently attractive.
All right, so we've covered make it obvious and make it attractive. Law number 3 is make it easy. This feels pretty straightforward, but I bet there's more to it.
Oh, definitely. It's rooted in a fundamental truth about human nature and really all nature. We tend to follow the law of least effort.
Law of least effort, meaning
Meaning, we naturally gravitate towards the option that requires the least amount of work. We are intrinsically motivated to conserve energy. Given 2 similar options, we'll naturally choose the one that requires less effort.
okay, that makes sense. We're wired for efficiency, maybe laziness.
You could call it efficiency, and this principle shows up everywhere. Jared Diamond, in his book Guns, Germs, and Steel, makes this fascinating point about the shapes of continents.
Yeah, you mentioned this earlier. The Americas running north-south, Eurasia east-west.
Exactly. And he argues this simple geographic difference had a massive impact on the spread of agriculture and thus human development. Why? Because it was far easier for crops and domesticated animals to spread along similar latitudes east-west across Eurasia, where the climate, daylight hours, and seasons were relatively consistent.
Compared to spreading north-south in the Americas where the climate changes drastically.
Right. That small difference and the friction of spreading agriculture, dictated by geography, had profound long-term consequences simply because one path was easier than the other.
Wow. Okay, so how does the law of least effort apply directly to our habits?
It's all about reducing friction. Think about exercise. Doing 100 push-ups a day. That requires a lot of energy and effort. In the beginning, maybe you're super motivated, but after a few days, that effort feels exhausting.
Totally. The friction is high.
Now, compare that to sticking to the habit of doing just 1 push-up a day. That requires almost 0 energy to get started. The friction is incredibly low. The less energy a habit requires, the more likely it is to actually occur consistently.
So make the desired habit as frictionless as possible.
Exactly. And a key way to do this is by optimizing your environment, not just to make cues obvious, Law 1, but to make the action itself easier.
Like choosing a gym that's on your commute to work.
Perfect example. You reduce the friction of having to go out of your way. Or think about Japanese companies and their focus on lean manufacturing. It's often about addition by subtraction. They add customers and revenue by subtracting wasted time and effort from their processes, reducing friction.
Even tidying up your workspace reduces mental friction, right? Less clutter, less decision fatigue.
Absolutely. It lightens the cognitive load. And look at all the habit-forming products and services out there today. Meal delivery kits, dating apps, ride-sharing services, even simple text messaging or voice-activated speakers.
They all succeed by making something easier, reducing friction.
Precisely. Businesses are constantly trying to find easier ways for you to get the results you want. Governments do it too. Think pre-filled voter registration forms or automatic enrollment in retirement savings plans, where you have to actively opt out instead of opting in. Small changes in friction can lead to massive shifts in behavior because we naturally follow the path of least resistance.
Okay, so reducing friction for the habit itself, what about preparing for it?
Ah, yes. This leads to the idea of priming the environment for future use. There's a great strategy mentioned by an IT developer named Oswald Knuckles called resetting the room.
Resetting the room, what does he do?
When he finishes using something, he immediately puts it back where it belongs or sets it up for the next use. Finishes watching TV, remote goes back on the stand, pillows are arranged, blanket is folded, gets out of the car, takes any trash with him immediately, even wipes down the shower while he's still in it after use.
Okay, sounds tidy. But what's the habit connection?
The purpose isn't just to be neat. It's to prepare the environment for the next action. He calls himself proactively lazy because he's making things easier for his future self. By resetting the room now, the next time he wants to relax or drive or shower, the friction is already removed.
Ah, reducing future friction. I like that.
It creates a world where things are ready to go. The author mentions his wife keeps greeting cards pre-sorted by occasion, makes it incredibly easy for her to grab one and send it when needed. Less friction than having to remember to buy one, find it, etc.
Or laying out your workout clothes the night before.
Classic example. Or chopping vegetables on the weekend for easy weeknight meals. Setting out the skillet and plates for breakfast the night before. Putting your drawing tools out on your desk ready to use. You're designing a world where doing the right thing is the easy thing, almost inevitable.
Okay, so make it easy by reducing friction, priming the environment. What about when you're actually starting a brand new habit? We often bite off more than we can chew.
Totally. We get ambitious, start too big, feel overwhelmed, and then quit. The antidote to this is the 2-minute rule.
The 2-minute rule. Tell me more.
The rule is simple. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do.
Less than 2 minutes. That seems too easy.
That's the point. You can scale down almost any habit to a 2-minute version. Read before bed each night becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Study for class becomes open my notes. Run 3 miles becomes put on my running shoes.
So you're just focusing on the very first step, the gateway action.
Exactly. You're creating a ritual at the beginning of a larger routine. The goal isn't necessarily to only do 2 minutes forever, but to make the act of starting so incredibly simple, so mindless and easy that you just do it without thinking. And often, once you've started, continuing feels much easier.
But what if you really don't feel like doing more? Does it still count?
Yes. And the author addresses the skepticism, the feeling of, I'm just fooling myself. His counter strategy is, commit to the 2 minutes and then allow yourself to stop. Don't pressure yourself to do more initially. He tells a story of a reader who lost over 100 pounds using this. His rule was he had to go to the gym every day, but he only had to stay for 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes?
Yeah. He'd go do 5 minutes, and often once he was there, he'd end up staying longer. But the commitment was just to show up for those 5 minutes, make the start easy.
So 1 push-up is better than not exercising. 1 minute of guitar practice is better than none.
Absolutely. It's always better to do less than you hoped than to do nothing at all. Because doing something, even small, reinforces the identity. I'm the type of person who doesn't miss workouts, even if it was just for 5 minutes today.
And then, once you've mastered showing up consistently with the 2-minute version,
Then you can use habit shaping. Combine the 2-minute rule with gradually scaling up. Master the first 2 minutes of showing up, then maybe aim for 4 minutes, then 10, then maybe the full routine. You advance step by step, but only after you've made the initial act automatic and easy.
start easy, build momentum, then scale. Okay, and this ties into decisive moments.
Yeah, our days are filled with countless moments, right? But a few habitual choices act like forks in the road. These are the decisive moments that determine the path you take for the next chunk of time.
Like what?
Like the moment you decide between ordering takeout or starting to cook dinner. The moment you choose between driving your car or getting on your bike. The moment you decide whether to start your homework or grab the video game controller.
These small choices cascade.
Exactly. They stack up throughout the day, the week, the year, and ultimately lead to very different outcomes. These little choices set the trajectory. Habits are the entry point, not the end point. They're like the cab that takes you to the gym, not the workout itself.
So the third law is about making it as easy as possible to just get in the cab.
Precisely. Make starting effortless, and the rest of the journey becomes much more likely.
Okay, we've arrived at the fourth and final law of behavior change. Make it satisfying. This feels like it's about the reward part of the loop.
Exactly, and it hinges on what the author calls the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated. What is immediately punished is avoided.
Simple but powerful. We do things that feel good now.
Right. Our brains evolved in an environment where immediate rewards were crucial for survival. Finding food, water, shelter, the payoff was immediate. So we are deeply wired to prioritize immediate gratification over delayed gratification.
And that creates a problem for building good habits in the modern world, doesn't it?
A huge problem. Because think about it. Many good habits have an immediate cost or discomfort, even if their long-term outcome is fantastic. Exercising can feel painful now, even though the health benefits later are huge. Saving money feels like deprivation now, even though financial security later is great.
Right, while bad habits are often the opposite.
Exactly. Bad habits often deliver immediate pleasure or relief, but their ultimate outcomes are terrible. Smoking feels calming now, but causes cancer later. Eating junk food tastes good now, but leads to poor health later. Sleeping in feels nice now, but maybe ruins your morning productivity later.
It's that quote from the French economist Bastiat, right? Immediate consequences versus later consequences.
Precisely. It almost always happens that when the immediate consequence is favorable, the later consequences are disastrous, and vice versa. The costs of your good habits are paid in the present. The cost of your bad habits are paid in the future. Our brains are wired to discount future costs and overweight present benefits.
So the challenge is delayed gratification. We know it's important, we preach it. But in that decisive moment, the long-term benefits just aren't motivating enough compared to the immediate feeling.
Exactly. So the solution isn't necessarily to fundamentally change human nature, or good luck with that. It's to work with it. How? By adding a little bit of immediate pleasure or satisfaction to the good habits that pay off in the long run.
And maybe adding a little bit of immediate pain or dissatisfaction to the bad habits.
You got it. Bridge the gap between the immediate action and the long-term consequence with an immediate feeling.
Okay, how do we add immediate satisfaction to good habits? Give me an example.
There's a fantastic real-world example from the Karachi hand-washing experiment. Back in the late 90s, a public health worker named Stephen Luby was working in Karachi, Pakistan. It's a densely packed city, poor sanitation, lots of illness, especially among kids. People generally knew hand-washing was important to prevent disease. That wasn't the issue. The problem was consistency. People would forget or just do a quick rinse, maybe only wash one hand. It wasn't sticking as a regular habit.
Knowledge wasn't enough. It was a behavior problem.
Exactly. So Luby partnered with Procter & Gamble, and they supplied Safeguard soap to the neighborhoods in this study. Now, Safeguard wasn't just any basic soap. It was designed to be a more premium experience. It foamed up really easily. It had a pleasant smell.
It made the act of hand washing slightly more enjoyable in the moment.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Luby noted that it's much easier for people to adopt products or habits that provide a strong, positive sensory signal. Think about the minty fresh taste of toothpaste or the rich lather of a nice soap or shampoo. That immediate pleasant sensory feedback makes the habit itself more satisfying.
So what happened? Did it work?
Remarkably well. Within just months, the rates of diarrhea, pneumonia, and other infectious diseases among children in the study areas plummeted, reduced by over 50% in some cases.
Wow. Just from better, more enjoyable soap, leading to more consistent hand washing.
Yeah. It clearly shows the power of making a healthy habit immediately satisfying, even in a small way. The brain registers, oh, this feels nice, making you more likely to repeat it.
Okay, so finding ways to make the habit itself feel good is one way. What about tracking progress? Does that make it satisfying?
Absolutely. Habit tracking is another simple but incredibly effective way to inject immediate satisfaction. This could be as simple as putting an X on a calendar every day you do your habit, or checking a box in a journal or an app.
Why is just making a mark so satisfying?
It works on multiple levels. First, the tracker itself acts as a visual cue, Law 1, make it obvious, reminding you to act. Second, seeing your progress visually like a growing chain of X's is inherently motivating. You see how far you've come, and you don't want to break the chain. That creates momentum.
Right, that don't break the chain idea is powerful.
And third, the simple act of recording your success right after completing the habit provides a little hit of immediate satisfaction. It's like giving yourself a mental high five. It provides immediate visual proof that you are casting votes for that desired identity we talked about, which feels really good.
Okay, tracking makes sense. But what happens when life inevitably gets in the way? You miss a day, you break the chain, then what? Feels like failure.
That's a crucial point. No matter how consistent you are, life will interrupt. Perfection is impossible, and frankly, not the goal. The key rule here is never miss twice.
Never miss twice.
Yeah. If you miss one day, maybe you get sick or travel or have a family emergency, the most important thing is to get back on track as quickly as possible, preferably the very next day.
So don't let one missed day spiral into 2, then 3, then giving up entirely.
Exactly. The problem usually isn't the first mistake. It's the downward spiral that follows. People fall into this all-or-nothing thinking, oh, I missed my workout yesterday, guess I've blown it. Might as well eat pizza tonight, too. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new negative habit.
So just get back on the horse immediately, even if you don't feel like it.
Especially if you don't feel like it. Showing up, even if you can only do a shortened or easier version of your habit, is crucial. Going to the gym for just 5 minutes, like that reader we mentioned, might not improve your performance much that day, but it powerfully reaffirms your identity.
I'm the type of person who doesn't miss workouts.
Exactly. It keeps the habit alive and maintains the momentum. As the author says, professionals stick to the schedule, even when it's boring or they're unmotivated. Amateurs let life get in the way. Never miss twice helps you act like a professional.
Okay. One last thing on satisfaction and tracking measuring the right thing.
Yeah, this is important. Just because you can measure something easily doesn't mean it's the most important thing to measure or the most satisfying.
Like the number on the scale for weight loss, it can be frustratingly slow sometimes.
Exactly. The scale can be stubborn, and if that's your only measure of success, you can get demotivated quickly, even if other positive changes are happening. That's where focusing on non-scale victories comes in.
Non-scale victories, like what?
Maybe noticing your skin looks better, or that you're waking up earlier with more energy, or your clothes fit better, or your mood is improved, or your endurance is increasing. If the scale isn't moving, shift your focus to these other signals of progress. They provide alternative ways to feel satisfied and keep you motivated.
So habit tracking provides evidence of progress and that little hit of immediate pleasure for a job well done, making the whole process more satisfying.
You got it. That's the essence of the fourth law.
Okay, we've covered the 4 laws for building good habits. Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. Now, how do we use this framework to break bad habits?
You just invert the laws. So the inverse of the fourth law, make it satisfying, becomes make it unsatisfying.
Make the bad habit feel bad immediately.
Exactly. We are much less likely to repeat a bad habit if it's painful or unsatisfying, especially if that negative consequence hits right away, not just sometime in the distant future.
Okay, how do we manufacture immediate dissatisfaction for bad habits?
One powerful tool is using a commitment device.
Commitment device, what's that?
It's basically a choice you make in the present that locks you into better behavior in the future, often by making the bad habit harder or more painful to perform.
Like the Victor Hugo story, locking away his clothes.
Classic example. He faced an impossible deadline for The Hunchback of Notre Dame. To force himself to write, he supposedly had his assistant lock away all his clothes, leaving him only a large shawl. He couldn't go outside, couldn't get distracted. The commitment device, no clothes, made procrastination painful and unsatisfying, or at least impossible.
Huh. That's extreme, but I get the principle. What are some more modern examples?
A friend of the author used a simple outlet timer that automatically cut off the power to his internet router at 10 p.m. every night.
Ah, so it forced him to stop browsing and go to bed, made staying online impossible.
Right. Or think about asking a waiter to box up half your meal to go before they even bring it to the table if you're trying to cut calories.
Yeah, because if you wait until it's in front of you and tell yourself, I'll just eat half.
Good luck. The temptation is too strong. A commitment device leverages your good intentions now, before temptation strikes, making it harder, more frictional, or more painful to revert to the bad habit later. It automates self-control.
What about making bad habits actually impossible?
That's the ultimate commitment device, really. The author talks about an experiment he did with his own social media use. He felt he was spending too much time on it.
Relatable.
So every Monday morning, he had his assistant change the passwords on all his social media accounts and log him out everywhere. She wouldn't give him new passwords until Friday afternoon.
Whoa. So he literally couldn't log in during the work week.
Nope. It became impossible. And what did he find? He didn't actually need to check it daily. It had just become an easy, frictionless habit. Once the bad habit was made impossible, he found he suddenly had more time and motivation for more meaningful work.
So how can we make our own bad habits impossible or much harder?
Think about the source of the habit. Unsubscribe ruthlessly from tempting email newsletters. Turn off notifications on your phone for distracting apps. Delete games or social media apps entirely, even if just temporarily. Move the TV out of the bedroom. Unplug the game console and put it in a closet after each use, adding that friction back in.
Make the path of least resistance lead away from the bad habit.
Exactly. When the effort required to act on your desires becomes effectively zero, you can easily slip into whatever impulse arises. Making a bad habit impossible, or at least inconvenient, forces you to confront that initial, easy impulse.
Okay, commitment devices, making it impossible. What about adding actual pain or consequences?
This taps into the power of accountability. Remember that shopping idea from Roger Fisher about the nuclear launch codes?
Yeah, implanting them near a volunteer's heart so the president would have to physically kill someone. Chilling.
Chilling, but it perfectly illustrates the power of immediate and tangible consequences as a deterrent. Pain is a very effective teacher. The more immediate and costly a mistake is, the faster we learn not to repeat it. A plumber gets a bad online review. That hurts their business immediately. A surgeon makes the wrong cut. The cost is immediate and immense.
So how do we apply that immediate cost to our own bad habits?
One way is through an accountability partner.
Having someone check up on you.
Yes, we care deeply about what other people think of us. Just knowing someone else is watching, someone you respect, can be a powerful motivator. If you don't follow through on your commitment to avoid a bad habit or stick to a good one, you risk not just disappointing yourself, but also being seen as untrustworthy or lazy by someone else.
The social cost.
Right. Suddenly, there's an immediate social consequence to your inaction or your slip-up. Comedian Margaret Cho apparently does a song-a-day challenge with a friend. If one misses, they owe the other. That accountability keeps them going.
And a habit contract takes this even further.
Yes, a habit contract formalizes this accountability, often with specific, painful consequences spelled out. Brian Harris, an entrepreneur, created a detailed contract to lose weight. It was signed by him, his wife, and his personal trainer.
What did it include?
It specified his goals, but also the punishments for failure. If he failed to track his food intake, he had to pay his trainer $100. If he failed to weigh himself, he had to pay his wife $500. He also had to dress up fully for work every single day. No casual clothes is another annoying consequence if he slipped up.
Wow, those are real, immediate, and unpleasant consequences. Public and painful. Did it work?
He consistently hit his targets because the cost of not doing the right thing was made immediately and viscerally painful. You can even automate accountability sometimes. Thomas Frank, another entrepreneur, set up an app that would automatically send out an embarrassing tweet from his account if he didn't wake up by 5:55 a.m.
Huh. Public shaming via automation.
Whatever works. The point is, making a bad habit immediately unsatisfying, whether through inconvenience, impossibility, or direct painful consequences via accountability, is the key to breaking its hold.
Okay, we've covered the 4 laws and their inversions. Now let's talk about moving beyond just good habits to really optimizing for great performance. What are some advanced tactics?
Well, first, we have to acknowledge the truth about talent and when genes matter. We often look at elite performers and think it's all just willpower or maybe luck. But genetics definitely play a role.
Like the Michael Phelps versus Hicham El Guerrouj example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Phelps, the swimmer, has this incredibly long torso, short legs, huge wingspan, physically built for swimming. El Guerrouj, the runner, is lean, incredibly efficient stride, built for middle-distance running. Both are phenomenal athletes, but they excel in sports that perfectly suit their natural physical attributes.
So genes aren't destiny, but they matter.
Precisely. Genes define your areas of opportunity. As the physician Gabor Mate says, genes can predispose, but they don't predetermine. Where you have a genetic predisposition for success, habits in that area are often more likely to feel satisfying. Law 4. Why? Because you're working with your natural inclinations, not fighting against them.
So the key is to align your efforts with your natural skills and what actually excites you.
Right. Play a game where the odds are in your favor. Direct your ambition towards things you're both good at and find genuinely engaging.
This ties into how personality influences habits, right? The big 5 traits.
Absolutely. Genes influence nearly every behavioral trait you can think of, including those core personality dimensions. Openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and eroticism. Your unique genetic makeup predisposes you to a particular personality profile.
And certain personalities find certain habits easier.
Generally, yes. Your deep-rooted preferences make some behaviors feel more natural and less effortful. Law 3. If you're highly conscientious, sticking to schedules might come easier. If you're highly agreeable, maybe group habits or team activities where collaboration is key will feel more attractive. Law 2. The idea is to pick habits that match your personality, rather than trying to force yourself into a mold that doesn't fit. Trying to build a habit that constantly goes against your core wiring is like swimming upstream, exhausting and hard to sustain.
Okay, so how do you figure out where your natural inclinations and skills lie, especially if you're young or exploring new areas?
This is where trial and error comes in, or what scientists call the explore-exploit trade-off.
Explore, exploit.
Yeah. Life is short. You can't try everything. So especially when you're starting out in a new domain, could be dating, choosing a college major, testing business ideas, there should be an initial period of exploration. You try out many different possibilities. Cast a wide net. See what resonates. Learn what works and what doesn't for you.
Gather data.
Exactly. Then, once you have some data, you shift to exploitation. You focus your energy on the best solution or path you found so far, the one that seems to offer the best return for your effort and aligns with your strengths and interests.
Find your sweet spot.
Right. Find that area where you feel authentic, engaged, where the work itself feels enjoyable, where you're not constantly fighting internal judgments or second-guessing yourself. Now, luck still plays a role. No Dutch Phelps was lucky to be born with his physique and find swimming. But if you can't find an existing game where the odds favor you—
Create one.
Exactly. Combine your unique skills in a way that reduces the competition and makes you stand out. The author talks about designing his own major in college biomechanics, combining physics, chemistry, biology, anatomy. He felt he wasn't necessarily top tier in any single one, so he created his own niche where his combination of skills was valuable.
Make your own game. Play to your strengths.
Right. Your genes can help clarify what's worth working hard on. Focus on fulfilling your own potential, not constantly comparing yourself to others who might be playing a different game entirely.
Okay, so you found your area, you're building habits. How do you stay motivated long enough to reach mastery, especially when things get tough?
This leads us to the Goldilocks rule.
Not too hard, not too easy, just right.
Exactly. Humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities. If a task is too easy, we get bored. If it's too hard, we get discouraged and give up. We need challenges that are manageable but still push us slightly. This is related to the Yerkes-Dodson law in psychology.
Like the Steve Martin example, expanding his comedy routine bit by bit.
Perfect example. He performed for years, constantly adding just a minute or two of new material to his act, while keeping some guaranteed laughs. He kept pushing his edge, but ensured there were enough small victories along the way to stay motivated, and enough mistakes to keep him working hard and improving. It took him nearly 15 years of this gradual expansion to become an overnight success.
So improvement requires this delicate balance. Push yourself, but make sure you're making enough progress to stay motivated. Keep it challenging, but achievable.
Right, and sometimes adding variety can help keep things novel and attractive, Law 2, to avoid boredom setting in.
But what about when boredom does inevitably set in, even with the right level of challenge?
Ah, yes. This, the author argues, might be the greatest villain on the quest for self-improvement. Staying focused when you get bored.
Boredom is the enemy.
It's a huge obstacle. An elite weightlifting coach told the author, at some point it comes down to who can handle the boredom of training every day, doing the same lifts over and over and over.
So it's not always about passion.
Not always.
Yeah.
We have this romantic idea that successful people just have this bottomless well of passion. But the truth is, they feel the same lack of motivation, the same boredom as everyone else at times. The difference: they find a way to show up despite the boredom. They stick to the schedule even when they don't feel like it.
Mastery requires practice, but practice can become monotonous.
Exactly. As habits become routine, automatic, they often become less interesting, less satisfying. You have to find a way to fall in love with boredom, or at least tolerate it, to reach the highest levels. As the saying goes, professionals stick to the schedule. Amateurs let life get in the way when motivation dips.
Okay, so you're showing up, you're handling the boredom, but how do you ensure you're actually still improving and not just mindlessly repeating?
That's the downside of automatic habits. Once something is automatic, you can become less sensitive to feedback. Mistakes can slide by unnoticed because you're on autopilot. You might assume you're getting better just because you're gaining experience, But sometimes performance can actually plateau or even slightly decline after mastery is reached if you're not careful.
So automaticity isn't enough for elite performance.
Not usually. For peak performance, you need to combine automatic habits with periods of deliberate practice, which requires conscious attention and feedback. This is where reflection and review become critical.
Like Katie Ledecky's swimming log.
Exactly. She and her coach review her daily performance notes, or Pat Riley's Career Best Effort (CBE) system, with the Lakers tracking detailed stats per minute, constantly pushing players to improve by 1% relative to their own past performance and others. These are formal systems for feedback and review.
What about less formal examples?
Comedian Chris Rock famously tests new jokes in small clubs, taking notes on what works and what doesn't, constantly refining. Some executives keep decision journals, where they write down important choices, the reasons behind them, their expected outcomes, and then review them later to see where their thinking was right or wrong.
So regular reflection prevents mindless repetition and ensures you're fine-tuning, not just going through the motions.
Right. Improvement isn't just about learning habits. It's about refining them through consistent feedback loops.
Now, what about identity again? What happens when a major part of your identity disappears, like the author after his baseball career ended?
That's a huge challenge. Many people experience an identity crisis when a central role in their life ends, being an athlete, being a soldier, being the CEO, being a parent whose kids have left home. If I'm not that anymore, who am I?
So how do you mitigate that loss?
The key is to redefine your identity in a more flexible, less role-dependent way. Instead of tying your identity solely to, I am an athlete, you redefine it as, I'm the type of person who is mentally tough and loves a physical challenge.
So the underlying qualities remain, even if the specific role changes.
Exactly. I'm a great soldier might transform into, I'm the type of person who is disciplined, reliable, and great on a team. This allows your identity to adapt and work with changing circumstances rather than being shattered by them. It makes you more resilient.
That's really powerful. Okay, final point here. Emotion versus reason in driving behavior. Which one wins?
Emotion, almost always.
Mm.
It's crucial to understand that actions are ultimately driven by emotion, by feeling. Remember the habit loop. The craving, which is a feeling, a desire, comes before the response, the behavior.
Right.
Studies of people with brain damage to their emotional centers show this clearly. They can often rationally list all the reasons why they should take a certain action, but they can't actually bring themselves to do it because they lack the underlying emotional drive. We can only be truly rational and logical after we have been emotional. Emotion is what compels us to act.
So appealing to someone's emotions is usually more powerful than just presenting logical facts.
Typically, yes, because people filter facts through their own unique emotional lens anyway. And fundamentally, as the author puts it, suffering drives progress. It's the feeling of dissatisfaction, the desire for a change in state, the craving that powers action.
Wanting things to be different motivates us.
Right. Craving means you're dissatisfied but driven. Without craving, you might be satisfied, but you lack ambition. Ultimately, your actions reveal what you truly desire, what emotions are driving you.
And this ties into the final formula: satisfaction, liking, wanting.
Yes, it connects back to that Seneca quote, being poor is not having too little, it is wanting more. If your wants constantly outpace your likes, what you actually have or experience, you'll always feel unsatisfied no matter how much you achieve.
Happiness is relative to expectations, to desire.
It really is. The author shared his own experience. Early on, getting 1,000 new email subscribers felt amazing, worth celebrating. A few years later, when he was getting 1,000 a day, it felt normal, almost mundane. He was getting results 90 times faster, but felt very little pleasure from it because his expectations, his wanting, had scaled up too.
So the pain of failure or the lack of satisfaction from success often correlates to the height of our desire, our expectations.
Exactly. High desire makes not getting the outcome hurt more, and it can make actually getting it feel less rewarding if the liking doesn't match the wanting. So remember the two roles of feelings. Feelings before, craving, wanting, motivate action. Feelings after, reward, liking, teach repetition. Desire initiates, pleasure sustains. Feeling motivated gets you to act. Feeling successful gets you to repeat. Hope might drive us initially, but sustained effort often requires acceptance of the work, regardless of the feeling. Hashtag Outrack.
Wow. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, let's try to synthesize. The core message really seems to be the incredible, almost unbelievable power of tiny changes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's about focusing on Your systems, the processes, rather than just the end goals, and mastering those 4 fundamental laws of behavior change.
Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Right. When you consistently apply even the smallest habits using these laws, you're not just changing your behavior, you're actively shaping who you become. You're unleashing these incredibly powerful compounding effects that can genuinely transform your life over time.
It's a fundamental shift in perspective, moving from big leaps to tiny steps consistently applied.
And as you reflect on all this, maybe consider this final thought. Think about your daily environment. How much of it have you consciously designed? And how much has just accumulated, designed by others maybe, or just by inertia?
Yeah.
Because that environment often unconsciously is silently dictating so many of your automatic behaviors every single day. It's like this silent architect of your actions.
That's a powerful image, the silent architect. So the question for you, our listener, to take away is this.
What one small intentional change could you make to your environment, maybe even today, to shift your trajectory?
How could you redesign just one small part of your world to make the desired choice not just a good option or even the easy option, but the truly inevitable one? That's your call to action from the deep dive.